Welcome back to the Great Wellness Reset podcast, where we explore the science behind how the body really works and how small changes can help you reset your health from the inside out. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jessica. Today's topic is one that almost no one talks about when it comes to brain health, and that's copper.
Yeah, this one surprised me when I first started digging into the research. When people think about improving focus or memory, they usually jump straight to things like caffeine, nootropics, productivity hacks, or maybe omega-3 supplements.
Right. Or the typical advice, drink more coffee, get better sleep, take something to boost brain power. But rarely do you hear anyone talk about minerals.
Exactly. And copper is one of the most overlooked minerals when it comes to how the brain actually functions. Yet it's deeply involved in how the nervous system communicates, how brain cells produce energy, and even how nerves transmit signals throughout the body.
Which is interesting because copper isn't something that stimulates the brain like caffeine does. It's not something you take to suddenly feel wired or hyper-focused.
Right, copper works in a much quieter way. Instead of forcing the brain to perform, it supports the biological systems that allow the brain to function smoothly in the first place.
And that's an important distinction. When people feel mentally tired or foggy, the first instinct is usually to push harder. Drink another coffee, take an energy drink, try to power through.
But sometimes the brain isn't lacking stimulation. Sometimes it's lacking support.
Exactly. And that's where minerals like copper come into the picture.
Let's start with the nervous system itself. Your brain and nervous system are basically the communication network of your entire body. Every thought, every movement, every sensation depends on nerve signals traveling back and forth.
And those signals rely on very specific chemical reactions happening inside brain cells.
Right, and many of those reactions depend on enzymes. Now, an enzyme is basically a protein that helps speed up chemical reactions in the body. Without enzymes, a lot of the processes that keep us alive would happen way too slowly.
But here's the interesting part. Many enzymes can't function properly unless they have the right minerals available. Those minerals act as what scientists call cofactors.
Exactly. And copper is one of those cofactors for several enzymes involved in the nervous system.
Which means copper helps these enzymes do their job, whether that's producing neurotransmitters, protecting brain cells from oxidative stress, or helping neurons generate energy.
Let's talk about neurotransmitters for a minute, because that's something most people have at least heard of.
Right. Neurotransmitters are basically chemical messengers. They allow one nerve cell to communicate with another.
And two of the most important ones related to focus and mental clarity are dopamine and norepinephrine.
Dopamine is often called the motivation chemical. It's involved in things like attention, drive, and the ability to stay engaged in a task.
And norepinephrine helps regulate alertness, attention, and how the brain responds to stress.
Copper helps support enzymes involved in regulating these neurotransmitters. So when copper levels are balanced, those communication signals in the brain tend to flow more smoothly.
But when something disrupts that balance, people can experience what many describe as brain fog.
Yeah, brain fog is one of those terms everyone understands, even though it's not really a medical diagnosis.
It's that feeling where thinking feels slower than usual. Maybe you're having trouble concentrating, remembering things, or staying mentally sharp.
And while there can be many causes, stress, sleep, blood sugar fluctuations, mineral balance can also play a role.
Another interesting aspect of copper involves something called myelin.
Now, that's a term people may not be familiar with.
Myelin is basically insulation for nerves. Imagine electrical wires in your house. They're covered with insulation so the electrical signal can travel quickly and efficiently.
Nerves in the body work the same way. Myelin wraps around nerve fibers and helps electrical signals move rapidly from one cell to another.
Copper helps support enzymes involved in maintaining that myelin layer.
So when myelin is functioning properly, nerve signals travel faster and more efficiently.
Which affects everything from reaction time to coordination to mental processing speed.
Hey everyone, we're going to take a short break.
If today's conversation about copper and brain health caught your attention, you may want to learn more about Wellness One Liquid Copper. Copper supports enzymes involved in neurotransmitter balance, nerve signaling, and cellular energy in the brain, all important for focus, memory, and overall nervous system health. You can find Wellness One liquid copper at procell.com/wellness1 or by searching Wellness One liquid copper on amazon.com.
All right, let's jump back into the conversation. Now, something else the article talked about that I think people will relate to is how common brain fog has become today.
Yeah, a lot of people feel mentally drained or scattered, even if they're doing all the right things. Scientists have noticed an increase in brain fog type symptoms since the COVID pandemic.
For sure. And modern lifestyles can unintentionally influence mineral balance.
For example, highly processed foods often contain fewer trace minerals than whole foods.
Another factor is that some people take large amounts of single minerals like zinc without realizing that zinc and copper share absorption pathways.
Meaning, very high zinc intake over time can reduce copper absorption.
And then you add chronic stress, which increases nutrient demand across the board.
Plus, digestive health issues that can affect how well minerals are absorbed.
When you put all of that together, it's easy to see how people might end up with subtle nutrient imbalances without realizing it.
Another important point we talked about is that copper doesn't work alone.
Right. Minerals function as part of a network.
Magnesium helps regulate nerve signaling and supports the nervous system's ability to relax.
Potassium acts as an electrolyte that helps generate the electrical signals nerves use to communicate.
And zinc participates in hundreds of enzyme reactions throughout the body.
So the goal isn't to megadose one mineral. It's to maintain balance across the system.
When minerals are balanced, nerve signaling, energy production, and brain communication all tend to operate more efficiently.
Another thing we covered is how to actually get enough copper.
The good news is the body only needs a small amount each day, around 1 milligram.
And many whole foods naturally contain copper.
Foods like nuts, seeds, legumes, dark chocolate, mushrooms, and shellfish can all contribute copper to the diet.
The key idea is variety. Eating a diverse range of whole foods increases the chances of getting the trace minerals your body needs.
Because even though minerals like copper are needed in small amounts, they support some very important systems.
So, stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, this conversation really changes how we think about brain health.
Instead of asking, what can I take to stimulate my brain? The better question might be, what does my brain need to function properly?
And often the answer involves supporting the systems that allow the brain to operate efficiently. Things like circulation, nutrient balance, and cellular energy production.
Copper is one of those quiet contributors. It's not flashy. It's not a stimulant.
But it plays an essential role in helping the brain communicate, produce energy, and maintain nerve function.
And that's really what the Great Wellness Reset is all about. Stepping back from quick fixes and understanding how the body actually works.
Because when you support the foundational systems, many things begin to improve naturally.
Mental clarity, energy, focus, they often become the byproduct of balance, rather than something you have to force.
Thanks for joining us today on the Great Wellness Reset podcast.
If you found this conversation helpful, make sure to follow the podcast and share it with someone who might benefit from learning more about how the body really works.
And if you want to explore more topics like this, you can visit greatwellnessreset.com, where we break down the science behind health in ways that are practical and easy to understand. And you can find Wellness One liquid copper at procell.com/wellness1 or by searching Wellness One liquid copper on amazon.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time as we continue exploring the small changes that can create big resets in your health.